Yo, welcome back. Welcome back, yo. My name's Blake, and we are coming back at you for part two of this episode on my philosophy, where I am riffing on my entire philosophy around kind of a new roadmap for life on Earth in 2026. And the big claim that I am making that I go deep into on the first episode, so if you want to listen to that, go back to the first episode, is all about how I believe the kind of map that we've been given in our society for how to live our lives, to how to think about living our lives, to how to orient to our lives is not working. It's not working, and we can see this on many different levels, statistics of that all kind of point back to this idea that our species is kind of sick right now. Like, this isn't just a normal time on Earth, peacetime, everything's all good. This is just what life's like fucking chaos. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we become so normalized to living in a dystopia, living in this time where every single day on the news it seems like we're seeing another massive event. You know, it's like one week one country is invading, the next week we have a school shooting, the next week someone's getting assassinated. Like, that's the time that we live in, and it in some ways it feels normal. And so I think step one is being like, yo, this is not fucking normal. We need a new map. And so all of that to say, part one was going deep on the wound, and part two today we're going to start going into like, what now? Okay, now that you've acknowledged that shit's not peacetime, that there is something that's deeply wrong, that I think we all feel on some level. Once you let yourself feel that, now it's like, well, now what? Now what do we do? Now what can we do? And the problem is that a lot of people feel like we can't do anything. There's nothing we can do. We sit there, we watch the news, and we see the immenseness. We see the profundity of the problems in the world, and we're like, what could I possibly do as an individual? So I think I maybe introduced this idea, but so the way that I see things, my worldview, is heavily influenced by a man named Bill Plotkin, who is a pretty legendary psychologist. He's written many books. He's kind of like a bit of a ghost, in the sense like he's not on all these podcasts and stuff, but his work is profound. And one thing that he says is that until we can inhabit our unique ecological niche, so our unique ecological niche as individuals, we won't be able to as a society. And so basically the idea is that until as individuals we learn, until we develop on the individual level, our culture cannot develop on the macro cultural level. You know, there's not going to be just one policy or one governmental change and then all of a sudden everything's fixed and individuals change. He is very much advocating for the approach of individuals learning to grow up. And that's a big term that needs a lot more unpacking. To what does it mean to grow up, in his idea, which is a whole other rabbit hole. And we're not going to go down that, and you don't need to understand the idea so much. His whole idea is like, the change that we want to see as a species, as a collective, is going to come from individuals tending to their garden, their unique part of the collective garden, doing your work as individuals, learning to inhabit your unique zone of calling, the unique solution that only you can bring into the world. So again, all this to say, for me, it comes back to the individual. It's like, cool, you want to watch the news a little bit, but bro, it starts with you. It starts with you. And again, here's the cool thing. Even if you don't care about helping our species in this moment and you just want to like live a good life, in my opinion, you would do the exact same thing that you would if you did care about our species as a whole, and you did want to live your life in a way that was in some way of benefit to the solutions that we need right now. Because I believe when we are truly living in alignment with the unique offering that only we can bring to the world, that is the path where the most fulfillment and meaning are that you could possibly experience. And so it's this kind of cool thing of like, all right, if you just care about yourself and you just want to enjoy your life and you're like, we're fucked anyway, so I just want to live the best, most enjoyable life I can. Well, I believe that is on the pathway of fully expressing the unique thing that only you can express, of becoming the fully grown oak tree. And that's a reference from the first one, but like fully growing into who you are and who you are here to become. And if you do care about the world and you do want to help, you don't do that by just becoming a social worker. You don't do that by just donating to some fucking philanthropist. The best way that you can help is by becoming the most expressed, robust, developed version of yourself. Becoming the most alive version of yourself. And that is through, I think, the expression of the thing that only you can express, the thing that only you can do. And everyone has that. And again, part of the reason why that's such a foreign idea is because we've been very malnourished in terms of the development we needed to start to recognize our unique essence, because that really is the soil from which our offering comes from. Okay, so now that we're on the same page, it comes back to the individual. So here's the roadmap for the individual. Step 1 is telling the truth. And I think I spoke to this in the first one as well, but for some of you, that means admitting to yourself that life's not as great as you thought it was going to be. That your life could use improvement, which is pretty much everyone. And for some of you, telling the truth might look like, I fucking hate my life and I feel empty and I'm pretty miserable. Or telling the truth might be like, I don't believe there's something better for me in this life. I don't believe there is a way out of this. Or it might mean that I'm cheating on my girlfriend. Or I don't love my girlfriend anymore. Or my habits kind of suck and they're kind of destroying my life. Or it's like, I've kind of been living my life avoiding what I truly feel and real. And all the people that I hang around that I've called my best friends, I actually don't feel very close to. Like, I think all of us on some level can resonate with those pieces of truth, that at some point we have experienced different degrees of those. And so it starts with just fucking acknowledging that that is a part of your reality. You can't heal or you can't change what you don't even acknowledge exists. So telling yourself the truth about your life, that's the first domino to fall. That opens the doorway into the possibility of change. And again, many people don't acknowledge the truth because they don't feel like there's any way out of what they're going through. And so why stew in that discomfort of your life? It's better to just distract and pretend that we're doing better than we actually are and try to acclimate to this life of okayness than it is to acknowledge that it is just okay, that it's not great, it's just okay, and that there's a part of you that longs for something more. So that's the first step. And so the next step after that is to try and do something about it. So what I would do is I would list on a sheet of paper, like based on everything that you've just told yourself the truth on, like what needs to change. First of all, what are all of the different things when you look at your life right now that you think you need to change? Or what are the big things that have been kind of lurking in the background that you can no longer avoid? So for some of you, that might mean having a really big conversation. For some of you, that might mean making a pretty big decision, maybe about your career, maybe about where you live. It might mean telling your friends the truth about what you've been going through. Or it might mean finding new friends. It might mean starting to try and change your habits. Or, let's say you have been super overly abusing cannabis for years, and you know that that's like a major habit that's keeping you back. So if that's you, then this could look like starting to change that habit, starting to try and let that go. Okay, so you're going to come up with this list of all of the things. Yeah? And so a couple of different kind of prompts would be all of the things that you know that you need to do, the kind of like things that have been sitting in your closet that you have purposely not been looking at. So that's one thing. Things you know you need to change that maybe are also scary and you have a lot of resistance towards. And then the other things would be like, what do you want to do? Maybe you want to get back into working out. Maybe you've always had this like deep longing to take a trip somewhere, or to, learn an instrument, or to, maybe you have a half-finished book that's been sitting there for 5 years. Finish the book. These sorts of things, like, what have you always wanted to do but never did? What have you consistently over the years been curious and interested in, but you've never really let yourself explore? Maybe because it's not realistic, or maybe because there's no way that could possibly go somewhere. There's no way that would lead to anything meaningful, or that's not going to make me money, so I'm not going to do that thing. I'm going to focus on all of this other stuff. So I would, based on what I just said, those prompts, I would get out a sheet of paper and literally write all the things that come to mind until you literally can't think of anything else. And this probably will take you a moment, okay? And so then when you look at that list, I think you know what I'm about to say. Start doing those freaking things. Because it's like some of these things, it's going to be like maintenance. And these are like the lowest hanging branches. But as you start to move through these things, there is going to be pieces on this list that, like, it feels like you just popped a bubble in your life that was full of energy. And this is an idea called death cookies that comes from Phil Stutz. And the idea is that these things that we know we need to do that we're not doing, over time, they almost like suck energy away from us. Like a tumor, it grows over time. But once we do the thing, it's almost like that tumor of energy, that bubble pops, and there we get a whole surge of energy in our life, and we actually get some of the energy back that was lost. So we get more as well. And so starting to do these things, at some point you're going to stumble into some of the big ones where you can really feel there's a lot of charge around it. There's a lot of resistance around it. And also there's a lot of, there's a deep knowing that you need to do these things, that there's a calling there. And that really is that's the gold we're going for, is these big pieces on this list that you feel resistance towards, that are scary in some way, that you make stories up about why you don't need to do them or why they're not important or you doubt them. But then on another level, you know that that's the thing you need to be doing. You know that there's deep calling. Those are like the golden nuggets of life that if you commit to doing those things for the rest of your life, I promise you, you will not regret the life that you have lived. Stephen Pressfield, incredible author, speaker, who wrote the book, The War of Art, which if you haven't read it, you should 100% add that to your list. Really short, easy read. One of his core ideas is that the things that we care the most about and are probably the most important to us and to the evolution of our life path, those are going to be the things that we have the most resistance to, the things that we fear the most, the things that we make up the most stories about why we shouldn't do them, or why they should just wait another year, why it's not convenient right now. We will literally do mental gymnastics to avoid having to do those things. And I think the sooner that you can download that kind of operating system where you start to see those things, you start to recognize your resistance, your doubt, your fear, and when you see that resistance, you start to recognize that those are probably the things that you need to do, not to be avoided, but those are where life lives. And this is a really core idea, which is that, like, the fundamental force of our reality, one of the laws of thermodynamics, is like entropy. It's the idea of entropy, which entropy is the force of reality that is, um, that is in some ways trying to end life. It is the force that makes things decay. It is the force that makes us grow old and die eventually. And then that makes our bodies decompose into the earth. It is like what is kind of moving against us. Yeah? It is trying to bring things to an end, trying to decompose things, okay? And whatever life is the force that is opposing entropy. Life is the force that is helping things to grow, helping things to become, right? And I mean, that's a bigger rabbit hole, but it's really important that this is like physics. This is like physics stuff, that there seems to be a force of life that is trying to help things grow, trying to help things become more. And then there is the force that we call entropy that is trying to oppose life force. It's trying to bring things to an end, to death, decomposing, decaying. And so, again, as I said in the first part of this, like, humans are a really unique species because of, humans are really unique for many reasons. As we talked about in the first one, it's our level of consciousness and, our ability for thought, for creation, for building, not only mere survival and moving with life, but actually to add to the life that's already here, to build things, to reshape things. We're creators. That's our species. And with that, we have the keys to also be destroyers and stuck in consumption and stuck in extraction. And that's kind of what we've seen. We haven't learned how to use the keys properly. And so again, as we're talking about maps, this is my worldview. My worldview is that human beings were monkeys that evolved. And when we evolved, we had this immense new capacity for what we can do as a species. Now we could all of a sudden, we could create. We had original thought. We could do things that we couldn't do before, and we can do things that other species can't do in the same way that we can do. And with that comes immense responsibility, because you take a tree outside or something like this, you can create more with it. You can appreciate the beauty of the tree, or you can cut the tree down and destroy the tree. That is the unique ability that only humans have. Squirrels don't get to do that. Monkeys don't get to do that in the same way that we get to do that. And I think what we've seen is that we haven't really learned how to use our unique abilities as a species. And this is like, that's a big statement, but like, I think that is like when we look at environmental collapse and abuses of power and a culture of complete materialism that is causing massive, damage to our planet, and on and on and on. Like, I think what we see is a species that hasn't learned how to use its abilities, because we can do immense good and we can do immense bad. That's humans. And I think in this moment on Earth, stuff is getting to a kind of a critical mass, a breaking point, where we're really having to ask these deep questions and ask, like, are there other ways of doing things? And if there are, it's time to learn how. It's time to learn how to be humans that can participate in this life on Earth in ways that aren't destroying, but are in ways that are creating. And again, that's a big statement, but you don't have to fix the whole world. Learn how to do this for yourself. And this is what we are doing. We are learning how to thrive as individuals and how to take care of ourselves. And really that is doing the thing that only we can do. And this is why this list is so important, because your list of what I just kind of walked you through is going to be entirely unique to you. There are going to be things on that list that for other people just wouldn't have the same charge, but for whatever reason, it is so meaningful and also scary to you. That's unique to you, and you didn't choose that. You didn't wake up today and say, I'm going to have this level of fear to this thing. No, you didn't get to choose that. So, what is the soul? What are these parts of us that we didn't actually get to choose, that almost it's like these pieces of who we are that go beyond our lived experience and conditioning and what we want. It's almost like an innate blueprint kind of thing that we came in with. So, I got on a little bit of a tangent there, but the core idea here that I wanted to talk about is that this force of entropy, of decay, of moving against how life wants to go. I think that is what resistance is in a way. And you can talk about this in different ways, like how biologically humans are hardwired to select for what is comfortable, what is safe, what is certain, what is known. And again, we fear the unknown because it could be dangerous. And so when we're looking at our future, when we're looking at our potential, what we could be, that's scary on some level. Because the very nature of our potential is that we don't exactly know who that is. We don't know what our life would look like if we became blank. And so it's a lot easier and more comfortable to stay stuck, to stay who we already are, to organize a life such that we're not really changing anymore. We're kind of just going in circles through the rest of our life. We're stuck on the same path over and over. And this brings us to a really important piece, because biologically, humans select for safety, for familiarity, for comfort, which basically is not changing. We are selecting for familiar environments, aka we are avoiding unfamiliar environments, aka our future, aka our potential. Problem is, surviving and thriving are two very different things. Surviving does not equal fulfillment and happiness and deep meaning. That comes from thriving. And I deeply believe that although there's many different parts, I think, that go into creating a meaningful life, and you can't just have one, I think a massive one is living a life such that you are doing the things in your life that you are called to do, that on some level you know you need to do, and also scare the shit out of you, and that you have resistance to. And those things, those are the steps into your potential. Those are the breadcrumbs of your future. Like that, to me, that is the language of how our potential is speaking to us. It's dropping these breadcrumbs in these things where on some level, we're deeply connected to it. We know we want to do it. We're called to doing it. And then on other levels, we are fucking terrified of it. And we feel resistance to it, and we have doubt to it. Like, there's no way I could do that. There's no way this will work. Yada, 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 yada. Because again, if it truly is your potential talking to you, then you are going to have to change. If you're not changing, then it's not your potential. You're just swimming in a circle again. And so, again, as long as you are on the growth process, as long as you are in conversation with your potential, you are changing, which means you are moving into unfamiliar territory, which means there is going to be parts of you that are terrified and that try not to do it and to try and keep you stuck. And it's not that they're mad or angry or judgmental or they want the worst for you. That's just safety. And I think this is part of like the kind of like unique paradox of humans, is that on some level, it's like, and you can think about this almost like the animal, like our monkey biology, and like the soul or the spirit or whatever, like, you know, all the other animals on life in some ways are just moving through their animalistic habits. But that's not us. We have these animalistic habits within us, but we also have the capacity to pause and to observe our animalistic habits and be like, is that what I really want to choose? Other animals don't get to do that. And so again, I think the choosing moment that we're in right now is like, do I really want to stay stuck for the rest of my life and live a life where I'm completely selecting for control, for safety, for familiarity, for comfort? And I think what many people realize and are realizing right now is that that does not fulfill the deeper parts of who we are. That doesn't fulfill the soul. That doesn't fulfill the part of us that craves a rich, meaningful life. And so again, like, we're having to move against the fundamental force of entropy. But that's what makes it meaningful. Doing things that are easy, doing things that don't scare us, doing things that have no weight internally for us is not meaningful. And so again, that is the resistance, the doubt. That's why it's like, that's why I say start doing those things. Those are not to be avoided. That's what gives the richness to life. I love to use the example of music. Like, the reason you love certain songs is not because they're just fucking flatlining the whole time, that they're the same sound the whole time. We love music because of the way it builds tension and then it releases the tension. We love music because of the way that it's a roller coaster. It does something internally to us. You would hate music if it was the same note the entire time with no tension and release, with no ups and downs. And I think that's the perfect metaphor for life, is that we don't want a life that is the same note the whole time, where it's like a flat-lined existence. But I think most people are living that way. Most people are stuck in their survival desire for control, for comfort, for safety. And so we try and control as much unknown as we possibly can. We try and live a life that is completely predictable, such that, you know, I have the predictable, safe paycheck. I know I'm taken care of. I have the house. I have the family. You know, I'm not taking risks. I'm not doing the things that scary. And so, I mean, overall, it's like curating a lifestyle where there's literally no risk at all. I'm not taking risk in my relationships. We're staying surface level. We're not talking about the real things that are going on. I'm not acknowledging the place within me that actually is craving more meaning. I'm staying stuck in this predictable, familiar lifestyle where I know what I'm doing for probably, you know, the next 5 years of my whole life. And I'm not really challenged in the way that I'm speaking to it right now. There's very little parts of my life that require me to step into unfamiliarity or discomfort. And then people are wondering why they're lacking a sense of meaning. And people are wondering why they're, you know, so addicted to their phones and stuff. It's like, if our cup of meaning is completely empty, we're going to go searching for pleasure in other ways, aka all of the short-term pleasure opportunities in our society. Like, yeah, of course you have all of these horrible behaviors and habits and addictions because there's a deeper place within you that is so incredibly malnourished, man. So I kind of just went on a rabbit hole, but it's a really important piece that people don't understand. Like, you don't want to minimize any form of unknown and uncertainty. You don't want to orchestrate your whole life so that you never have to take any sort of risk. You're missing the point. Like, the richness of life comes in those moments where you're in the tension and the release is about to happen, but you're in the tension. You're like, oh my God, is this going to work? Yada, yada. anyone who's ever done anything great in our society had to go through a lot of tension. Steve Jobs, these kinds of people, like, dog, they had to fail many times, fired from their first company. They were in a life of taking risk and they didn't give up. And so, but here's the thing for me is like, many people listening might be like, well, why would I do that? Why would I go take risks and whatnot? And so, again, if it's just you in this empty blank universe where there's no other intelligence, where it's just you and your tiny ego trying to figure it out, trying to take care of yourself, trying to survive, trying to not get killed. If that's your worldview, then it makes a lot of sense that you would want to select for zero unknown, for zero uncertainty, right? Like I would too. And so, think to yourself right now, is that you? Is that how you're living? And question the deeper assumption that you're making about life. I know that maybe you read the Bible and you think God's real, but like, how is that interfacing with your life? Is this greater intelligence somehow influencing you? Does it have certain desires for your life? Is there something that you can rest into knowing that it wants the best for you? Knowing that somehow it's not just you. Again, so the way that I think about it, for me, a part of my views with God intelligence is like, it's not a person on a throne, whatever. It is literally like the fundamental of force of life that wants to grow. Humans, and so that force is going through the grass. It's the force that is infusing the blueprint of the acorn into becoming the oak tree. But humans are unique. And so I think for me, I deeply believe this is how I live my life. I believe it, and it's worked for me. It works, and I think it works for other people. And the cool thing is that you can experiment with this, but like my belief is that like those things on that list that you need to do that also, deeply scare you, the things that are going to require you to take risks and step into the unfamiliar, uncertainty where not everything is so easily predictable, like those are, again, breadcrumbs of your potential. Those are like pieces to your blueprint. And so my deep belief is that that force of life, it wants you to do those things. That's why you can't stop thinking about those things on the list. That's why no matter how hard you try to forget about the thing that you wanted to do 5 years ago, you can't forget. That's why no matter how hard you try and forget the fact that you don't really like your job or your life, you can't forget. There is something there. There's something knocking on your door that is wanting to grab your attention and say, wake up, tell the truth, and do these things, because they are the doorway into your future, into your potential, into you stepping into the most alive version of yourself, into you bringing forth the unique solution that only you can. It's incredibly important. And so again, like, you're not going to do things that scare you, that are unfamiliar, that require risk, if you do not believe that there is some other intelligence of life that actually has your back. Period. Full stop. End of story. Why would you? It makes no sense. And I think what happens for a lot of people is that they get to a place in their life where they're just like, fuck this. Everything else I've tried doesn't work. Pretty miserable with my life. So you know what? It's like that final stance. Like, fine, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking do it. Fuck it. And then their whole life changes. And so for me, like this life force that I'm talking about, it wants you to grow. In the same way that when you look at a baby being born. Okay, so at first we have a single sperm cell and an egg cell. It's like a zygote. And correct me, my science is not precise on this. And then what happens? These cells go into a process called cell division, there's a better name, mitosis or meiosis, something like this. Anyway, that one cell turns into millions, maybe billions of other cells. And then these cells turn into tissues, and then these tissues turn into organs. And then all of a sudden we have a body. And then the body grows up, and it's like no one has to orchestrate that process. That whole process happens on its own. How do you explain that? So, the way that I see that is there is a force of life that wants to grow and that knows how to grow and knows what to do. You can see the same thing in ecosystems, the way that ecosystems of life self-organize. An invasive species comes in, and the whole ecosystem goes through this process of like restabilizing, rebalancing, of reorganizing around this thing. It's like it's self-regulating. It knows what to do. It knows how to grow life. And then what do we see in ecosystems? Forming new connections, selecting for biodiversity to become the most colorful, robust version of itself, selecting for resilience. So there is this fundamental force of growth, of life. And I think one of the deep human wounds is that for some reason we see ourselves as outside of those laws of nature, that everything else is conforming to that. But no, we're the special species and we get to resist that. Again, we are a unique species, but I do not think we are outside of those laws. We maybe relate to them in a different way, but they are coming through us in the same way. And so that same force that knows how to grow a zygote into a freaking full-grown baby, that knows how to rebalance complex ecosystems in nature and grow them into the most robust, beautiful, healthy, interconnected ecosystem of life, that same force is coming through us. And it is in the same way that force is interacting with the zygote, that single seed turning into complexity. The seed within us is our blueprint, is this unique blueprint that we were born with. And again, that list that we already went through, those things that deeply scare you, that move you, that you have this deep connection and there's weight to for you, those are parts of your blueprint. And as we start to pull on that thread, it's like we are pulling on this huge tangled spool of yarn. And it's just going to continue expanding and expanding and expanding. And as you start to follow those threads and doing those things, your life is going to change. And one of the most important parts is that there is going to be a momentum that is starting to form. And as the momentum is building, you are literally changing with the momentum. And it's like the horizon that you are looking out upon your life at. Like, and maybe a better way to say that is like the lens of your life that you're seeing through is going to change as the momentum is generating, because the momentum it's a felt sense. It's you're feeling. It's in your body. You can feel that momentum and it becomes electric. So we're going to shift gears here a bit, but I think just to kind of close the loop on the idea of this this list, it's like you keep following that list. At some point, it is going to ask you to leave the job, or it is going to ask you to make that leap within your current job. It is going to ask you to, finally confess to that woman that you actually love her. Maybe that's your wife. It is going to ask you at some point to write that book, or to start that podcast, or to do that thing. And again, like this is not a 5-year project. This is a life. This is a way of life, truly a way of life. And I think it is the most interesting, alive game to play, because it kind of becomes like this, what do you call it? Like a treasure hunt. You know, you're curious, like, what is this next thing that I am going to be asked to do? And where does that desire even come from? Why do I suddenly feel this big urge to do this thing? You can't explain it. You can't explain it. There are forces bigger than just our mind and our lived experience at play here, right? So, and one quick aside that I want to make here is like, if we are looking at nature and life, and we see that life's desire is to do life in better ways. Life's desire is to continue doing life and to grow and expand in complexity. And one way to say that the scientists wouldn't say is like, life's desire is to continue doing life in more beautiful ways. And again, that sometimes includes things that we would look at and be like, oh my God, that's horrifying. How, but the grand desire of life is to remain at like homeostasis and to continue doing life. And so if that force, we were making the assumption that the force that just wants life to do life in more beautiful ways is flowing through each of us, like, it makes sense because of our ability for unique individual expression that is unique to humans. Like, life is going to use each of us like a pawn on a chessboard to play out its desire for life to be doing life in more beautiful ways. So that's where the idea of like we each carry a unique solution, a unique offering to this planet, on like a very evolutionary perspective. So, all right. So we've gotten to the point where we're telling ourselves the truth. We've got the list, yada, yada, yada. We're starting to do things like that. So one frame that I love is this idea of the chariot and the rider. So like a chariot that like a king or something would ride in. And that imagery I love a lot. And the chariot you could look at as like the animal side of who we are, like our basic biology as a species. Whereas the rider, the driver, you could look at as like the soul. And I've explained a lot at this point. So if you want to use a different word for the soul, do your thing. But I think we're on the same page in terms of what I'm pointing to when I use that word. And so the idea is that the soul is the driver. The soul is the captain of the ship. It is telling where to go. And you can also think about the chariot as like our ego, right? My ego is the only reason I'm interfacing with you right now. If I didn't have an ego, I would just be in blank space. Who is Blake? I don't know. What are these ideas? I don't know. The ego is what organizes who we are and allows it to interface with our surroundings. And so, you can look at the chariot as our biology, our bodies, our animal, but our ego. And then the driver. Who's driving the car, right? Who's directing my life? Who's telling me what to do in each day? And that's the soul. But for most people, the driver of their car is like our societal conditioning, is all of the shoulds. This is how your life should like. This is what you should be doing. Or it is, all of our unhealthy habits and behaviors, which your soul is probably telling you, hey, you need to stop. You need to change. And, I think the truth of it actually is like, for most people, they're not driving their car at all. They are asleep at the wheel and there's no driver. And when we're asleep at the wheel and there's no driver, we are just a leaf blowing in the wind of whatever environment or greater society and culture we are in. So, and that's the state of most people. Again, we're like, we're drowning in the water and we're hoping that someone's going to come save us. You know, our government, our government's going to come save us. Donald Trump's going to come save us, yada, yada, yada. And part of that, it's not your fault. Like I said in the first one, like we didn't really develop agency, critical thinking, uniqueness. We didn't develop the ability to change our lives, learning habit change, learning these things. We weren't taught how to tell ourselves the truth growing up. And so in many ways, we started a bit behind. But that's where we're at. And so, yeah, most people don't actually have a driver at all. And so we're starting to get in the driver's seat. And again, as you start to go through this list, you are going to naturally develop the sensitivity to those things that are deeply connected to you. And in some ways that are your soul telling you to do certain things, because you feel certain things that have a kind of weight to them, that have a charge to them. And again, you can just trust yourself that as you go through the list, like this is naturally going to happen. You can trust me in that. And so why do I share this frame, the soul and the chariot? Because there are two really important things. Many of you listening to this are going to be kind of at the beginning of telling yourself the truth. But some of you maybe have already gotten down that rabbit hole. A lot of what I'm saying is familiar to you. And the idea of the soul is very familiar to you. What I've seen and what I see in a lot of spiritual people, and I went through my own version of this, is that we get really into the soul. We get really into the esoteric out there sides of what is the soul, this part of us that's greater than who we are. But then what happens is that our chariot becomes underdeveloped, and you can't have one without the other. And that's what I see in our society too, is like there are some people who only focus on the chariot. So these are like hyper productive, like Alex Hormozy types, like just do the thing, 18-hour work days, let's go, working out, training, yada, yada. Let's grow the business, let's build the thing. But they're kind of missing the soul element. They're missing that deeper place of direction within themselves, that connection to the deeper part of who they are that is infusing all that they do. And they could use that, and then maybe at some point they burn out so deeply where they're forced into kind of this whole awakening process and realizing what they were doing was missing some elements of what they were really longing for in their life. And then, this is like the CEO, the burnt out CEO who finally like has his whole awakening, or has their whole awakening process and is forced to change. Because as we said in the first episode, life communicates in feathers, bricks, and freight trains. And so on the other side of the spectrum, though, we have a bunch of really cool out there spiritual people, though, who don't have the capacity to create meaningful things in their life. They don't have the capacity to build a business. They don't have the capacity to make enough money to not worry about money anymore. It's like their soul's online, but the chariot that they have is like missing two wheels. We've neglected the body. We're not working out anymore. We think that like to care for the material things is somehow wrong. And so both of these sides could use the other one, and they would be beautifully integrated, and it would be quite powerful. Because when we have both, we are operating from a deep place of listening and connection to the deeper parts of who we are, which is connected to life itself. So you're not necessarily going to have to worry about spending 20 years on something and realizing that you were completely, off your path, right? Like we're moving from a deep place of listening and connection to life. And we are building the skills so that we can take action when life tells us to take action, so that we can accomplish this to-do list. And when the to-do list asks us to write the book or to create the business or to change in some way, we have the machinery, we have the vehicle primed to do that thing. When the directions on the map say sail to this destination, the ship is ready. The crew of our life is ready. The sails are ready to go up. There's no leaks in the bottom of the ship. So both of these are so incredibly important. And again, part of having a robust ship that's ready to sail is training, is developing really healthy habits in your life is to cleaning up the unhealthy habits. Is training skills. What is the specific skills that you're somehow drawn to? It is, maybe for you is writing. That's what it is for me, or building houses or something. Like, it can look so many different ways, but what is the unique skills that you're drawn to? So then when life summons me, my skills are ready to go. I have trained, I have prepared for this moment. So yeah, I was going to say something else, but I forgot, and that's part of doing things like this. So I will come back to it if I remember. I know what I was going to say. Part of this as well is exploring your unique interests and curiosities. You didn't really choose those things. That's just you. That's just you. And so, you can think about it like your taste. Part of expressing and discovering your unique blueprint, I think, is exploring your taste. What are the kinds of people you like to listen to? What are the topics that you're interested in? What are the, areas of life that you're uniquely drawn to? Continuing to feed that part of you, to feed that taste, because that is probably going to inform a lot of what you want to do. This is what I'm interested in. These are the skills I want to learn. And so again, preparing for life, preparing for those moments, preparing for when life speaks to you. Because I think, mission control center of life, who's trying to use you in the unique way that only you can be expressed in the world, it's like, it's going to use these things. It's going to use your lived experience for sure. It's going to use the way that you grew up in your environment, but it's going to use your unique gifts and interests. It's going to use those things that you're uniquely drawn to, the skills that you have learned in your unique way. Like almost like a puppet. It wants to use you. It wants to use your uniqueness, because that's where you shine the most. That is the unique offering that only you can bring into the world. I think I just said unique like 15 times in 1 minute. Anyway, so yeah. Let's see. So part of the same list that I've mentioned now many times, the things that scare you that you need to do and whatnot, a part of that, another way to speak to that, is dreaming into the horizon. So dreaming into your horizon of life. This is a practice, and I think a way of life that we should be doing all the time. Is like continuing to not just settle for the way things are, but dreaming into what could be. I think that's a fundamental part of who we are. It's not escaping your reality. It's not saying I'm not enough, I need to become this to finally feel good about myself. I think there is an innate, natural part of being human where when we look at the horizon, we imagine what could be possible. And that's not something to be suppressed. It's something to be massaged and expressed. It's beautiful. That's the world builders within us. And so, continuing to dream into the horizon in your own way, doing things outside of the ordinary, like going on a hike and watching the sunset, and just like finding those spaces where you really can touch that essence of what could be possible, the unique longings within you, and putting those things on your list. Okay? Putting those things on your list. There's so much here, and I am brain dead because we've been going at it. But there's a couple other things. So part of the Chariot, I think, is you can think about it like you're building systems. You're building a vehicle that that the soul can get into and be like, I want to go over there, and the car is primed. It's ready to drive. Car, ship, same metaphor, is ready to sail the open sea. It can last. It can go through these high open seas. The car can make it up these steep mountains because you have built a robust car that has the ability to do hard things, to answer life's calls when it comes. And so there's a couple things here. One of them is habit change, behavior change, installing a new operating system for this. And so this is going to be a whole other episode, but the truth is, our culture has not taught us how to change. Our culture has not taught us habits and behavior change. And most people, when they try, suck at it. That's why 91% of people fall off their New Year's resolutions by January 21st, and then they don't try again until the following year. That's bullshit. We are going to be changing for the rest of our lives, I think. If, in my opinion, we should be. And it's not that we're broken and we need to become someone else. It's just because, like, we're constantly updating our software. We're constantly becoming. We're always at our growth edge. And so one, I think, is learning how to do behavior change in a way that doesn't feel like we're running away from our brokenness, but actually just feels like it's a way of life. And we can change from a place of wholeness, which is a whole other thing, again, that I haven't mastered for sure. But I think that's the North Star. But in very, very, very short, use the frame of experimentations. And so you're experimenting. Pick a date. So pick a time, 30 days, 45 days. That usually works for me. We're not doing it forever because that doesn't click. We don't take it seriously when we just say, I'm going to do this forever. So pick a date, 30 to 45 days. If you're new to this, pick maybe 1 to 2 behaviors that you want to do. Pick how long you're going to do those behaviors for. Are you going to do it every day, every other day, 30 minutes a day? Choose that. And then frickin' track yourself. Build a tracker. Don't just leave it up to, oh, I think I did it. I don't know if I did it. Track yourself, because when you track yourself, the behavior naturally starts to improve without you even having to try and improve it, just because you're starting to track it. You're bringing your attention to it. And that does something naturally. So again, we weren't taught maps of change, and it sucks. But I think this is a part of prepping our vehicle, is learning the art of change. Because this long list that you have, there's going to be some things that, need implementation, that need a system to go into. It's not just a lofty desire. Oh, I'm going to do this now. No, I'm going to do this now. Or no, we're saying I am doing this for 30 to 45 days and why we're not doing it all the things at once is that once you have the behavior, you don't have to think about the behavior anymore. Okay. That's one thing. I'm going to kind of just go speed run here because I need to go. But we're going to keep going on this. I talked about feeding your taste. I think embracing a lifestyle of learning where you're constantly learning and you are on a pursuit of mastery within a specific domain. So there's something that you are continually working towards is essential. One, because it's feeding your interests and curiosities. And that is, I think, breadcrumbs of our bigger life path and our blueprint. Also because our species evolved to have goals and to work towards goals. Period, end of story. And most people don't. Most people stop learning. They stop having big goals after a certain amount. And I think they kind of wither away. It's like we're leaf blowing in the wind and we feel kind of unfulfilled. And what am I doing with my life? But when you have a fucking North Star and you're like, this is my goal, this is what I'm going for. Boom. That's incredible. And the other big thing around like how do we build the Chariot, how do we build this vehicle, one of the things, like I already mentioned, is the behavior change, is the experiments. Another huge part of it for me is learning how to time bend and energy wield. And so what I mean by that is we have finite time on this planet. We have finite time in a day. We have finite energy. And so I think one of the most important skills is learning how to organize your time and your energy such that you are doing the things that are most meaningful to you and you are moving in the direction of life that you want to be moving in, so that when you go to bed at night, you can sleep well knowing that you ought to be doing what you ought to be doing, which most people don't experience. And so for some of you, you might be doing something you don't want to do, a job that you realize you don't want to be doing. So this might start with like, what free time you do have during the day and how are you using that time. For me right now, I have organized my life in a bit of a different way, but like I am getting up at 6 right now and I am not doing anything until noon every day. I don't check my texts, my messages until noon. And that's my time where I am journaling, meditating, reading, writing, creating, doing videos, YouTube stuff, because all of that are such important things to me. They're meaningful. They feed me though. It's not even about just the end result. The process of doing these things feeds me. It brings me more into alignment with who I am, with the deeper parts of who I am. And over time, they turn into valuable assets and skills. I'm building a knowledge base. The only reason I'm here right now sharing all these things, and maybe you think I sound coherent and I have something to say, this is because I've practiced this. This is because I've been on a process of learning for a while. Anyone listening to this, you can do this too. You won't speak about the same things though, because you are going to be interested in the unique things to you. And so, there's so much more that I want to say to that. But one of the things with the time bending and whatnot is like, within our society, with the level of distraction and whatnot, you could spend an entire day doing things that, people need, whether it's you answering texts or other stuff, and not spend a single moment doing something that's actually meaningful to you, that is important to you. Like, so all that to say, if you don't develop the ability to, take control of your time and your energy, and I almost think about it like a gatekeeper, where the gatekeeper can say, no, I'm done. I'm not scrolling anymore. I'm not taking any more information. Or that says, like, this is what I do. From 6 to 12 every day, I'm not answering anyone's texts. I'm not getting on my email. I'm not doing anything but creating. So I think about it like I call it my cave time. So I'm going into my cave. And I think that is essential in our time. Having uninterrupted time where it's just you, where you're not on your phone, where you're thinking, where you're learning, where you're creating, absolutely essential. And there's a lot of research on why being in flow state is beneficial to overall health, psychological well-being, that the more flow state time you're in, the better you feel, kind of thing. And I don't think a lot of people really experience flow state on a regular basis. So all of this to say, I just said a lot of things and I probably missed some things. So maybe I'll do a follow-up. But the biggest difference with this map that I am proposing, this way of life and the other way of life, and by the way, this map that I just proposed, like, I am including career, making money and whatnot, because this list, the driver of your chariot, the soul, these deeper inclinations and feelings and desires that you have, like, they're going to form into something. Like, these greater forces, these intelligences, they are embedded in the context of our current society. They know that we need jobs to survive. They know that we live in a capitalist society. So it's infused into everything. So I just want to say, like, this isn't just about hobbies and fun things outside of work. Like, what I'm proposing following this map is, like, eventually this turns into your entire life. This turns into your career, how you're making money. And for me, my thing is, like, my deeper calling, my blueprint lives at the center of my life, so that I am making money by expressing my blueprint into the world. And again, that is going to be so unique to everyone. There's not one way of doing that. It's so unique. And it's possible. If you're listening to this, I think it's possible for you. And you ought to try. Because that, in my opinion, is like, a really good life. You're getting to do the things that bring you more aliveness in your life. So, what I was going to say is the biggest difference between this and the mainstream path we're on is that what I'm proposing, it's full of unknown and uncertainty, and I can't tell you what your life's going to look like. It is a path of trusting one step at a time, that my potential, the highest timeline for my life lives through me doing these things, is through me eating the breadcrumbs that my potential is dropping, is listening to my deeper callings and doing the things that scare me, and building infrastructure in my life so that those desires and whatnot are supported. So, many people were still conditioned to want certainty, to want predictability. And so, I'm proposing this whole other way of life, and they're like, but can you just at least tell me, like, what my career is going to be, like, what I'm going to do and whatnot? It's completely missing the point. So I'll leave it there for now. I hope that this was beneficial. There's loads of things that you can do. And I would imagine that if you made it to this point in the episode, you probably had thoughts of things when I was talking about the list. You probably have an idea already of the things that you need to do that you're not doing. And there's no shame. It's okay. And just know that we are in a really critical time. And you have a role to play. We are all the crew on Spaceship Earth. No one's coming to save us. And you can do something about it. And what you can do is grow your garden, is to take care of yourself, is to express your blueprint. And if you don't care about anyone else, I still think that's the most interesting, alive, fun way to live your life. So I'll leave it there for now. If you made it to this point in the video and you enjoyed and you got something out of it, please consider liking this and please leave a comment. I hate doing this alone. I love to hear. So what landed, what didn't land? What do I need to speak about more? What areas do you not agree with? I would love to hear from you. And hit that subscribe button so you can see the next time that I make a video. Because if you enjoyed this, then you're probably going to enjoy everything else I'm talking about. Because I'm talking about my philosophy. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys here on the next one.